This one ancient Stoic rule will save you from modern miseducation. See, in ancient Greece, there were two different types of education. There was math, science, poetry, rhetoric, philosophy. That was considered high culture. But if you wanted to get a job, they taught practical skills like carpentry, mechanics, farming, animal husbandry, which are skills that help you survive. They had a word for it, episteme, which literally meant skilled knowledge. It was about knowing how to do something, and the ancient Greeks considered this type of knowledge actually more valuable than high culture. In fact, the word Sophia literally meant skillful in Greek. It was what we would call nowadays know-how. And being wise, according to the ancient Greeks, was about knowing what you don't know, and therefore knowing where to acquire the right know-how. There is so much that we don't know. As a matter of fact, even the most intelligent person in the world doesn't know anything compared to everything that there is to know. So wisdom is really just being aware of our own ignorance. Now, this has been lost in modern times. We have gone through a period of time when we valued only some types of knowledge over others. This is something that the Stoics didn't do. For them, both types of knowledge were equally valuable because both types of knowledge contribute to the good life. Both types of knowledge help us live well, not just in terms of like success or money or career, but also in terms of happiness, peace of mind, flourishing, living a good life. And so I think it's very important to learn from the Stoics how to be humble and curious and teachable at all times, no matter what our station in life is. You see, Seneca talks about how he learned how to cook from his slaves. Epicurus talks about how he learned how to fix shoes from a cobbler. Marcus Aurelius talks about how he observed a farmer, and how the way the farmer tilled the land made him think about how he himself tills his mind. Even Diogenes, who is famous for his philosophical wisdom, was once found by Alexander the Great, and Alexander asked him, "Hey Diogenes, I heard you're looking for a philosopher. You want a philosopher? Here I am." And Diogenes said, "Get out of my sight. You're not a philosopher. I see you drive around in a chariot. I see you have all these horses with you. I see you have a big entourage. You're not a philosopher. I'm looking for someone who is self-sufficient, who is frugal, who lives a simple life, who doesn't need anyone. Go away. Get out of my sight." And then Alexander did something crazy. He left, and he sold all his possessions, and when he came back to Diogenes, he said, "Now, are you a philosopher?" And Diogenes said, "No, you're still not a philosopher. I see you walked barefoot. No, no, no. A true philosopher doesn't need to show off his virtue. A true philosopher practices virtue. So stop acting and go do something." And then Alexander went away again, and he came back and he asked the question a third time, and Diogenes said, "Yes, now you're a philosopher. Now you're a philosopher because you sold your possessions, you gave it to the people, and now you walk barefoot, you walk simple, you're dressed plainly." And that's when Diogenes finally said, "You are now a philosopher." Why does this story teach us this lesson? Because even a great philosopher can learn from a simple farm boy, from a cobbler, from a slave, from an emperor. It doesn't matter. The point is that we should never close ourselves off from learning from anyone. In fact, Marcus Aurelius writes in Meditations that we should be able to learn from our inferiors, that we should learn from children, from women, from the young, from the old, from everyone, even from our inferiors. Why? Because everyone has their own particular skill set, and we should be able to identify what those are and learn from them. But here's the thing. We can't learn from other people unless we have a beginner's mindset. And what's stopping us from having that beginner's mindset? Our ego. See, our ego tells us that we've already mastered something before we even begin to learn it. Our ego tells us that we know everything already. Our ego is always preventing us from learning new things. And so if we want to change the world, we must first change ourselves. We must first become like children, says Epictetus. Innocent, open, curious, teachable, empty, ready to receive. And this is what the Stoics mean when they talk about becoming like a sponge. You have to squeeze everything out of you so you can absorb everything in. If you're full of yourself, you can't learn anything new. You're too busy thinking that you already know it. You're too busy protecting your image. You're too busy worried about what people think about you. You're worried about looking foolish. You're worried about losing face. You're worried about your reputation. You're worried about showing people that you don't know something. It's funny. One of the reasons why people love the Stoics so much today is because they think the Stoics are super confident. They think the Stoics are super badass. They think the Stoics are stoic, right? Stoic, strong, firm, hard. No emotions, right? But the Stoics were none of those things when it came to learning. The Stoics were little sponges when it came to learning. They were like little students. They were eager. They were open. They were humble. They were curious. They were teachable. They weren't afraid of looking stupid. They weren't afraid of looking foolish. They weren't afraid of looking naive. They weren't afraid of asking questions. They weren't afraid of not knowing. They weren't afraid of admitting that they don't know. You see, Marcus Aurelius writes in Meditations that the key to all of philosophy is to start with the question, what do I not know? And that's what we need to relearn today. We need to relearn that we don't know anything. We need to relearn that we know so little. We need to relearn that we should never stop learning. We need to relearn that there's always something to discover, always something to understand, always something to appreciate, always something to be amazed at. We need to relearn that wonder. I think this is so important. I think that we should raise our children with this kind of mentality, not with the mentality of competition, but with a mentality of curiosity. And here's the beautiful thing. When we take on this kind of childlike approach to learning, we not only learn more, we also become happier. Because when kids learn, they're not stressed out about it. They don't feel threatened by it. They don't see it as a competition. They don't worry about failing. They don't worry about being humiliated. They don't worry about what other people think about them. They just do it. I've seen my daughter. She'll learn something and she'll just tell everyone, look what I learned. Look what I learned. She's so proud of herself. And that's the mentality that we need to reclaim. That's the mentality of the learner. That's the mentality of the student. If you want to change the world, you must first change yourself. If you want to change yourself, you must first change your mind. If you want to change your mind, you must first become a student. If you want to become a student, you must first be teachable. If you want to be teachable, you must first be humble. If you want to be humble, you must first admit that you don't know. And that is the secret to learning. And that is the secret to wisdom. If you want to go deeper into the ideas of the Stoics, and I would love to have you there,